Hello, everybody. This is going to be just a quick demonstration on how I prepare my panels, at least how I've been doing it lately. What I've got out here is a whole bunch of I think I bought about 15 panels yesterday. They're all cradle board. What I've done already is I've used the 123 Bullseye or Zinsser primer. I found this works really well. It doesn't smell too badly, and it dries in about an hour. So I just go ahead and prime the whole thing so that it's fairly watertight. On the back, I use a brush just to get into the crevices, and it's a pretty thin coat. I don't worry too much about making it perfect. And then on the front, I actually use a foam roller, and I don't get a whole lot of texture here. So basically, I don't even need to sand these. It's actually a really nice texture on them already. And what I'm going to do is the next coat, these are dry, I did them yesterday, so dried overnight, 100%. Now I'm just going to, again, using my roller, I'm just going to dip it into this container of gesso. Currently, I'm using the Liquitex acrylic medium gesso. It's fairly inexpensive. I buy it in a big bucket. And I'm just going to roll a couple out. So I'll just do that really fast here.
Hi everyone. Anyway,
Hey,
preparing.
so I'm just filming a quick demo of kind of the prep for my panels. So I just kind of dip it into the gesso, and I'm just going to roll that out. And I don't want too much. I prefer to put it in thinner coats. So that's quite a bit of paint on there, even though I haven't rolled it out yet. I'll just go ahead and move over to the next panel while I've got this roller with a bunch of gesso, and I'll just put it on there. I'm going to paint the sides of these black. Thanks to Gail in the class, I now use house paint versus acrylic paint, and it's working much better, much cheaper, much faster. So now I just roll this out. I'll usually kind of go both ways.
Are those wood panel, Michael?
Yeah, they're basically a cradle board that I went ahead and put a coat of house primer on them. But I find just doing the roller is so fast. You know, a lot of people use brushes. That I do that as well. It kind of depends on the texture you want. After I get a lot of this paint off, I've got enough paint on just one dip of the roller to do 3 panels probably. Again, I like to put it on in thin coats. I'd rather have multiple thin coats than big thick coats. Get a little less texture, a little more control. So just by dipping a half of this roller into the gesso one time, I've already covered 3 panels. You can see how fast this is with the roller.
Yeah.
Be doing 15 of them. There's a smaller one. So I'm still going with that first dip of gesso. And what I'll do is once I get the gesso almost off this roller, I'll go back and re-roll all of those one more time and really knock down any of the little bumps. And a lot of times I just kind of roll across until I get everything covered. And then I'll actually roll it out one more time very, very lightly. And that gets rid of a lot of the texture. So if we look at this, there's no texture on this at all. So I've got 4 panels covered. I'll go back to the first one because when I put it on initially, there was a lot of gesso. And I'm just going to very lightly roll that out. So I don't re-gesso the back because that's fine. It's got the house primer. I don't do the sides because that's fine. It's got the house primer on it. I did the same thing with the roller yesterday. And again, I'm going to paint these edges black. Let me show you that really quickly. I just bought a large can of house paint and split it into a bunch of these little Tupperware containers. These are ice cream containers. I love these, but just a note that once you get paint onto the edges of these, they're almost impossible to open. So what I do is, before I put the paint in, I rub Vaseline inside the lid and along the edges here, and it makes it just so that I can open and close these forever, and it's really nice. So I find this is a much more manageable versus trying to pour, a little bit of paint from a great big paint can. This is much more manageable. And again, that's for painting the edges after I've done the painting, or I can do it before and then I can tape it off. Lots of options there. Any questions, you guys?
That's wonderful. It's good to see you do that, because now everybody can understand how much time and energy it goes into preparation. And the preparation is actually giving you a very good result when you paint.
Right. And you definitely speed up the process when you do a whole bunch. Like the ones you're seeing are only part of them. I've got them laying all over the studio. Here's another quick note. After I've gessoed it, there's going to be these little drips on the edge, which will leave a bump. So I just literally will take a paper towel or my finger and just run it along the edge while it's wet to get rid of those bumps. Because I don't want a lot of texture showing through, unnecessarily distracting.
Do you sand those, Michael?
If these need sanding, I found with the roller, it's a foam roller. There's very, very little texture in this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really need to sand much because I like just a little bit of texture to kind of grab the paint off. But yeah, sometimes, they're a little more textural than I want. That's why I don't do the brush as often, because the brush definitely leaves more texture. I've also found that multiple coats of gesso are better than one thick coat of gesso. And I just put it on very thin. And I do about 2 or 3 coats. This will dry in about 2 or 3 hours. So kind of, I can keep painting on my easel. And then, as I'm taking a break, I'll come over and do a couple more. And with the roller, I can do them so quickly. I am seeing like little bumps maybe of dried gesso and stuff, and I'll just pick those out and roll the area. There's a little bump. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm just going to remove that. So a little bit of extra work makes it so maybe I don't have to sand it. If you do end up having to sand your gesso or sanding in between layers, I very much suggest wiping that off as much as possible. I actually have a little vacuum that I have here in the studio that I can do after I sand. Also, what I'll do is take a paper towel, just a little bit of water, or maybe my Mister bottle, and I'll just spray it and I'll wipe them off. I just want to get that dust off, because any dust that's left on after sanding makes the paint not want to adhere very well. Plus, as you're painting, you'll get these funny little, it starts picking up the dust and it makes these odd little marks and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I'll do is I'll let these dry for, a couple hours today. And, maybe at lunchtime or whatever, I'll do another coat. I'll do all of these right now. You guys don't have to watch me do 15 panels. That'd be pretty boring. But I'll let these dry. No, actually, I'm going to make you guys actually sit here and watch these dry with me.
Okay.
Just kidding. But then I'll revisit these, do another, just like I did, just a thin coat of gesso, let that dry. And I can decide, like, is 2 coats enough? Because I do have the house primer already on there. Or I could do a 3rd coat just to make sure. But it's fast, and especially if I'm doing like one panel, getting ready for a painting, and then the next time I want to do a painting, doing another panel, you got to bring out all these materials and everything else. So I suggest kind of doing it in bulk. Yeah, like I said, I've got panels floating around everywhere here in the studio right now, because that's how I like to do it. I will do a whole bunch of these. I can even just, to save space, set them up to dry, lean them up against the wall or whatever. And yeah, any questions?
So,
What
Michael,
do you- Sorry, Rajani, go.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no problem. The black sides, can you do it after the painting, or you should do it before the painting?
I found either works.
Oh.
I don't know how well this will adhere. Like, let's just say I make a little bit more of a mess when I'm painting, and some of the paint gets onto the edges with oil paint. I don't know. This is a water-based paint, so it may not adhere as well. So oftentimes what I'll do is after I'm done with this, I can use the roller. More likely here, I'll just do an example. Great question. So I have tons of these foam brushes. You can buy them really expensive if you buy a big pack of them. And like we were saying in class yesterday, you can just throw them away. They're so cheap, but I wash them. I try to use them a couple times, but they do start to fall apart. So to paint the edges, I like to use these foam brushes. They have nice sharp edges. The great thing too about painting on boards versus a canvas is it's really easy to paint really clean edges. On a canvas, there's a little bit more of a roll. It's a little bit rounder. And it's a little bit more difficult to make really clean edges. So let's just shake this up a little bit. Open it up. And again, I'm always putting Vaseline on there has saved me so much, because otherwise, if it's really, really, really stuck on there and I can't open it, I'll actually fill the sink with hot soapy water and just put these in there upside down into the sink and let them sit for a long time. And usually that helps to get them open, but just put a little Vaseline on before you put the paint in. And I've had no problem since I started doing that. So these are a very slim profile. These are a 1 inch, maybe less, maybe 3/4 of an inch deep with a bigger edge. I might use a bigger one, but since it's so small, I'm just going to use a little guy. What I do to paint the edges is I'm going to take the face of it, the part I'm going to paint on, and I'm going to lean it towards me. That way, if any of the paint like splatters as I'm painting it, it's going to go onto the surface. So I'll just take this, I'll load up the edge. Are you guys seeing it on the screen okay?
Yeah.
So I just put a little bit of paint on there, and then I just pull it towards me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lift as I come towards myself. And look at that. For the most part, that's a really good, nice, clean edge, besides that little bit. And I can just remove it really quickly. So then I just go to the next side. Same thing, just load it. I load the back edge, corner furthest away from the front. And then I'm just going to pull that paint towards me. And again, I'm just lifting as I come towards me. And yeah, it just makes super nice, clean edges. So what I can do then, after I get all 4 sides of that done, if I want to protect that while I'm painting, and it's also really fun, is I can then take painter's tape and wrap those edges.
After it's dry.
Yeah, I don't do that as often as I used to, because I found if the tape stays on them for months and months, let's just say, you know, I'm doing 15 panels here all at once, the paint or that tape really starts to adhere very strong.
Yeah.
So I don't really tape. What I'll do oftentimes is just this, and then I'll paint on it. And let's just pull up an example here of the painting we were working on yesterday. So here's a good example. Here's the painting we were working on yesterday.
Yeah.
And you can see that I painted the edge black, but you can see now that I'm painting on it, it's getting contaminated again by the oil paint on top.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I can just go back in. Sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing where the camera's pointing, but I can just revisit that really quickly. And clean that back up. And just like the primer, just like the gesso, sometimes it takes more than one layer. But this
Mhm.
house paint also dries within a couple hours. So yeah,
Okay.
look at that edge compared to that edge,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
so
just so fast.
yeah, so this is a regular house paint, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and you can pick which one you want. I like the satin
Mm-hmm.
because it's not too shiny compared to my
Yeah.
painting.
Yeah.
And the matte, just like in your house, you know, if
Yeah.
you're in a bathroom, you'll oftentimes pick a shiny paint or a
Mm-hmm.
satin, just because it doesn't attract dust as much. It's easier
Yeah.
Do
Um,
you add frame, Michael, or do you just hang it as it is, or like, yeah, you're
it
collecting?
depends on the gallery and it depends on the client. I a lot of times I'll offer these framed and then they can also buy them unframed. So I'll show them that, you know, for a lot of people, they like this kind of modern, clean, you know, look without a paint, you know, and then the edges look really nice. So I can, you know, make the paintings a lot cheaper if I'm not framing them, especially if I'm shipping them. Like, let's say, you know, I had to ship a painting to England to my, you know, new friend Hassan, and he did not want to pay for, you know, the shipping because frames are very expensive to ship. They're very heavy, and they're also get damaged the most, even more than the paintings. The frames what get damaged in shipping. And so I just kind of give that option of like, hey, I can take a couple $100 off the price. The shipping will be much cheaper, and you know, you can just frame it when you get it, or you can, you know, maybe you like this modern, just kind of clean edge. So I like having that option.
No.
I would love to have one of your
I like
paint.
that.
Yeah.
What was that?
Saying, I would love to have one of your painting, Michael.
Perfect. Well, we'll figure that out here one day soon. Great. Well, I would love to have one of yours one day too, Hassan. So perfect.
I have a quick question, Michael. So
Yes.
in between the gesso, how do you keep the roller? Do you just dip it in water or just?
Yeah. Sometimes I can just take a, well, let's just show you. Good question. So a lot of times I have a bunch of these rollers. They come in packs of 6. So I'll just go drop it in the sink, you know, with water in it until I'm ready to clean it. Another great trick is I can just take a paper towel and wrap it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Here we go. Here's a plate, a plastic plate that you can see this is where I put the primer paint into. But it's, yeah, well, let's pretend it's dry. Then I would just put this here. And this could be a towel, this could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just take my mister bottle.
Okay.
Oh.
So nice. It's gonna get wait for like for the
And it
next
just won't dry. Yeah, it won't dry for at least, you know, a couple hours. And every once in a while, maybe I'll look over and give it more. A towel is actually better if you just kind of get a wet towel and wrap it around there.
Yeah.
I like the wet towel. It keeps it ready for the next time.
Yeah, you can leave them for hours.
And then you can put that in like a shopping bag, like a plastic shopping bag, and it'll
That's
keep it.
exactly right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if I really wanted to be good about it, I could take some of this wrapping from the canvases and
Sure.
wrap that around it. And this
Exactly.
will stay, this now will stay wet for probably days if I, you know, really wrapped it up well.
That's a really good trick. I usually wait for like 10-15 minutes between the coat because I don't want to clean it every time.
Hassan, I'm sorry, can you talk just a touch louder?
I was saying like I wait like 10-15 minutes between each layers of gesso coat because I don't want to clean it every time.
Oh yeah, and that's not enough time. Yeah, the gesso needs to needs to dry probably at least a couple of hours.
Mhm.
And if you put a wet rag on the roller, it stays, and throw it in something plastic, it'll stay
Mhm.
wet until tomorrow.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like I said, I have like 5 or 6 of them, so I'll just go drop this one in the sink,
Mhm.
clean it, and just have another one. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll drop all these things into the sink, in here in the studio, and then just do a big cleaning at the end of the day or whatever. But again, even these just have to stay wet. A lot of times I'll just spray them down pretty well. I'll also add a little bit of mist onto the top of my paint here and into my gesso jar. Oops, you can't see that. Into my big gesso. I'll actually add a little bit of mist into that too,
And
just so
Michael,
that they're not drying out, because the more I use it, the more air is inside of this and the more likely they are to dry. So a little bit of water helps. Yeah.
and Michael's Mr. bottle came from Michael's. The
Oh,
store.
let me show you one other trick. This is a funny one, and I've got myself in trouble. But I'm going to take this gesso, and what I do is, to make sure I get all the edges, as I put it down on the ground and just simply
I do the
step
same
on it.
thing.
But that being said, one time I did kick it over, so
Oh.
just so you know. And that was a big cleanup, having a big thing of gesso all over the studio floor.
Cool.
Okay, any more questions? You guys think I covered that pretty well? Okay,
yeah. Michael, I have a question.
please.
I have already opened my oil paint tubes and I didn't know we have to put Vaseline. And so the lids of the tubes, they don't fit properly. Is there any way I can rescue them?
Like, okay, so the lids don't go back on, or they don't come off?
They don't go back.
Okay, I use my palette knife to kind of clean the little, whatever you call them, how you screw it back on.
Yeah, yeah. Is it, you should get rid of the dry paint and clean it.
Yep.
And
And
I
like the lids, sometimes I'll just drop them into some paint thinner for a little while.
Okay.
And then I'll do the same thing either with paper towels or with my palette knife, depending on, and just kind of clean them out. And then the other thing is, when when I use up a paint tube,
Yeah.
and if it's a good lid, it's nice and clean somehow, it's still, I'll actually save a couple. So I've got a couple of the different sizes just ready.
Yeah, I also save the lids. in
Yeah,
case.
steel wool is what Linda's showing us. That's a great trick.
This
Okay.
is this is a little heavier than steel wool. It's like an old pot scraper that you can buy like at Walmart or any home store. But
Okay.
steel wool is very good to put turpentine on it and roll it around the tops and inside the top. So just let your top sit in turpentine.
Okay.
But I use this thing. This is my open lids and do all kind of artsy things with it.
What
And
is it?
Very cool. Hey, Michelle, how's it going? Goodbye, Michelle. Good seeing you for a second.
Oh, we scared her.
So Michelle, I just gave a little demo of how I prepare my panels with the different layers of paint. And it's recorded, so I'll share that to our Padlet page here soon.